Hello and welcome. I'm Laura, and today we have a very gentle flow that will hopefully help work on your knees and your hips in a little bit. So, I would recommend having a bolster or blankets and cushions for this practice just to give your seat a little bit of elevation. So, find yourself a nice comfortable spot and let's get started. We'll start today's practice in a supine position on our backs with your knees pointing up. If you have your blankets and props and things to hand, just put them over to one side for now and we'll use them in a moment. So let's begin to slowly roll down. Your knees bent. You can hold onto the backs of your legs to allow your back to gently release down to your mat. Take a moment to settle here. Roll your shoulders a little bit under your body. Neck's nice and long. Hands can rest at the side of your mat, or maybe on your belly, one hand on your chest. Just coming into this space, connecting with your breath. And we'll start today's practice with some very gentle movements. So I invite you to press down with your right foot to help lift your left leg up, bringing it in towards your chest. It can stay bent. Bringing it into your chest very slowly. And then clasping behind the back of your knee here. You don't have to pull the leg in too much. It can just stay in a comfortable, neutral position. And become aware of your hips and your sacrum, your seat touching your mat. And you feel those points of contact pressing down. Feel like there's an evenness across both sides. As you then begin to lift and straighten your top leg. It doesn't have to be completely straight. Lifting it up and bending back down, keeping that evenness of pressure down on your mat. Lift again and back down. And once more, lifting up and all the way back down to your mat. Release your leg, let it go. Planting your foot firmly back down. Pressing down with your left foot to help lift the right leg up. Clasping behind the back of your knee gently. And feeling that evenness of pressure again of your hips pointing down into the earth. Begin to straighten your right leg. And bending it once more. Straightening. Bending it down. And once more straightening, lifting your leg. And bending it and allowing it to come all the way back down. And drawing both of your knees in, you can take one knee at a time. Give them a nice big hug. You roll your knees around a little bit, doing some circles here. Just loosening up your joints gently. And the other way. This is a nice movement for your hips as well. And back to center. Give them a nice squeeze. And we're going to roll all the way back up to sitting. So this is like a nice little back massage. If this is too much of a motion for you, you can just come up in your own time, what feels best. But if you want to do some rocking, you can hug your knees, maybe take the back of the knees if that feels better. Begin to rock. It's a really nice feeling on your back, actually. Rolling back and forth. One last time and see if you can come all the way up to seating here. I'm just going to come to the center of my mat a little bit. So you're coming back up to your seat here. Your hands can be behind you to help lift you up. The knees are staying bent. And you can straighten out your right leg. Now here's where you may want to use your bolster or your cushions, pillows, blankets rolled up. If this position seated here feels uncomfortable, you can take your bolster, place it underneath just to raise your seat a little bit. Hopefully that makes this feel a bit more accessible. But if you're fine on your mat, then great, you can stay there and you can use your hands to help prop you up. Hopefully here you might be all right. You can lift yourself up like this. So with your right leg out in front of you, toes pointing up, your left foot firmly pressing down into your mat. Can you see if you can lift your right foot up just a little bit? It's quite a hard motion. Lift it up a bit. Back down again. Lift it up and back down. And lift it up one last time. Can you hold it a little bit? And back down. It's surprisingly tiring. I always find that motion, but it's a great strengthening exercise for your legs and your knees and your hips. So bending your right leg, taking your left leg out in front of you. We'll try it on this side. So once again, pressing firmly down with your right foot, your left toes pointing up. And you can use your hands to help you find a little bit of length here, or maybe they're behind you to support you as you lift that leg up and back down again. Lifting up and back down. And one last time, and you lift up. Maybe you can hold it for a little bit. See how that feels. And back down again. Great. And then you can take your foot back together here. Sitting. Taking a moment. Just reconnect with your breath. See how your breath is moving. Were you holding it at all? It's easy to when we're doing slightly difficult or new movements to hold your breath. So take a moment to come back to your inhale and your exhale. And from this space, I'm going to move into a figure 4 position. You can stay where you are, but I'm going to turn around so you can see me. You can stay up on your bolster or on a mat, whatever works for you here. So with your knees bent, I'm going to drop them over to the right-hand side. If you're up on your bolster, your knees just maybe here. Maybe it's up there. You could always put another cushion underneath if that helps. Just raise this one up a little bit. So you might be here, or perhaps you're here on your mat. Find the position that works for you. See if you can find this nice right angle. Again, you might want to place something under this leg here. See how that feels. So in this figure 4, you can frame your front foot, leaning over ever so slightly. I'm going to take some similar movements again with this knee. So we're going to lift the right knee up and then bring it back down, and then see if you can bring your foot up. So we're getting some nice movement, rotating out and in with your hips. So see, can you rotate outwards, lift your knee up, bring it back down again. And then see, can you rotate your hip? Imagine this movement's coming from your hip as well. Rotating your hip in to lift that back foot ever so slightly. And drop it back down again. And then can you rotate it outwards? Lift that back knee up. Dropping it back down. And then rotating your hip inwards. Can you lift the back foot up ever so slightly? And drop it back down. And one last time. I'll move this out of the way so you can see as well like this. So lifting your knee up, dropping it back down, and then can you lift that back foot up ever so slightly, and back down again. And then you can bring both knees all the way back up to the center of your mat. And we're going to take them over to the left-hand side. Again, you might be up on your bolster. Maybe you have something underneath this knee. Find the pose that works for you. And if you are up on your bolster, I'll show it this way this time. Maybe we're up here. When you come to lift this knee up here, Hopefully you have a little bit of space to lift that one up. You can always lean forward a little bit if you need to find the space. So in your figure 4 pose, in whatever place it is, come forward. You can support yourself on your hands like this. Lift that back knee up, rotating out, dropping back down, and rotate inwards to lift your back foot. Back to center. Rotate out, lift your knee. Back to center. Lift up and back down. And let's do one more. Rotating out, lifting your knee, taking it back down. And then rotating it in, lift the foot and back down again. And then coming back to your center here again. Your knees bent. Again, take a moment to come back to your breath here. And we're going to come into your bound ankle or cobbler's pose. Bringing your feet together. Again, you might want to stay up, raised seat. This might feel comfortable for you. Or if it feels quite accessible, maybe you're on your mat. I find this quite a difficult pose. I have very internally rotated hips naturally. So I find that this movement is the opposite of what my body wants to do. So it's quite a tricky one. So lotus pose is not a naturally coming pose to me. So seated in your bound ankle, you can hold the legs, the ankles here. Never hold the maybe take some little flaps, little butterfly wings, gentle flaps of those wings here. And feel that motion is coming from your hips, rocking them in and out. Then come to neutral. See if you can find length throughout your spine, lifting all the way up. From here, imagine your pelvis is like a bowl of water. So when it's nice and neutral, the bowl is still, it's gentle, the water's level. And then when we tip this way, the water's going to come out. And then when we rock our pelvis back the other way, it's going to tip backwards behind you. Now, normally you'd like to keep a neutral pelvis all the time. But for this to allow a little bit more movement, can you imagine you have that bowl of water in your pelvis and you're going to try and tip it behind you? So I'll turn. Hopefully this might make it a little bit easier to see. So you have that lovely bowl of water and you're going to try and tip it behind you. So I'm going to imagine I'm rocking my pelvis back to lift up at the front and pull down at the back. And by doing so, that creates some space for your legs to move out and externally rotate a little bit more. So by pulling your pelvis back, feel like you're tipping that water out behind you. You can then feel like you can push your knees down a little bit more and you'll find that space. And then come back to neutral. And then feel like you're tipping that all the way back behind you. Knees can start to push down and externally rotate round. Come back to center. And we'll do it one more time. And with this motion as well, feel like you're dragging your feet back behind you. You're not actually pulling them, but the motion of feeling like you're pulling them will help also create that activation and that external rotation. So one last time, you have that lovely bowl of water. You're tipping it out behind you. You're pulling your feet in towards you. And this allows space for your knees to go down a little bit more. Keep that activation going. And then come back to your neutral position here. Well done. It's quite hard to do that, I find. But yeah, here we go. Bring your knees back up to center. And if you have any props here, you can move them out the way now. So any blankets, bolsters you raised up on, just pop them over to the side, calming down here. And take your hands behind you, turn the back behind you if you can, if that feels comfortable. Otherwise, they can always point forward. Find the way that's good for you. We're going to come into a little reverse tabletop. So see which works best for you. I like my hands to point backwards, but it's yogi choice. Pushing your feet firmly down into your mat. We're going to pretend to lift your hips up. And as you do, be aware of your knees, that they're not collapsing in or splaying out in this motion. Try and imagine you have a ball in between your legs, like a football, and you're squeezing it, but it's keeping your legs out at the same time, keeping them nice and neutral. So pressing down with the feet to lift up. Lift, 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 lift. Imagine you have that imaginary ball in between your knees. You're squeezing it, lifting up with your hips. Pushing up. And back down slowly, slowly, slowly. You can bend your elbows to come down. And we'll do that once more. So finding maybe that stance worked for you. Maybe you need to find a little bit more depth. Maybe you're a bit too close and bunched. See what works. Maybe you want to try your hands facing the other way. Okay. And as we prepare to press down with your feet, to lift up with your hips, pressing down to lift up. Lift, 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 lift. Squeezing that ball. And then coming back down, bending your elbows, rolling down. And we're going to come back all the way down onto your mats. Rolling down slowly, holding onto your knees, the backs of your legs to come down all the way. I want to invite one last movement in. As we come into a happy baby, help release your hips. So bringing each knee in towards your chest. Can you see if you can grab the foot? If you can't, you can always just grab your legs. You can be here in your happy baby. That's a great one. Maybe you're coming in. You can come in a little deeper here. See which one works for you. Maybe it's here. And feel that outward motion, your knees coming out and down to make space. You can always rock a little bit here as well. And then bring your knees back together, rolling back down. Planting your feet back on the mat, the knees bent. And we'll finish with a little bridge pose, a gentle inversion while still utilizing your hips and your knees here. So pressing firmly down with your feet, tuck your shoulders under a little bit, and pressing down to lift up, just like you were with your reverse tabletop. Pressing up. Imagine you have that ball between your legs again. You're squeezing it in, but it's forcing them back. Activating those muscles, lifting up with your hips, firmly planting down with your feet. Lift, 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 lift. And then roll back down ever so gently. And then to come into your Shavasana, maybe you take one of your props again. I like to place it underneath my knees like so. Take your feet out to the edge of your mat. Release your arms down. Coming into a gentle rest. Coming back to your breath. Your gentle inhale and your exhale. Enjoying this moment of calm. A chance to reflect on your practice. How your knees and hips feel. If there's anything you felt you needed to modify or that you need to in the future, just noting. Coming back to your breath. Inhale. Exhale. Inviting some gentle movement back into your body as we prepare to sit and close your practice today. Wiggling your fingers, wiggling your toes, deepening your breath, your inhale, your exhale. As you roll over to your left-hand side, just push any props out the way, coming over to your left. And gently coming back up, pressing yourself up very slowly to seated. You can sit on your mat or maybe raised on your cushions, your bolsters. Take whichever pose works for you. Maybe your knees are bent. Maybe they're cross-legged. Find your seat. Coming back to your breath. Your inhale. Your exhale. Taking one hand to your heart and one to your belly. Giving thanks to yourself for taking time to practice today, to look after your body. I hope this practice serves you well. It's something you can take away, maybe just utilize some of these movements here and there if you find you struggle with a little bit of knee pain or hip pain. I definitely do, and just incorporating a few of these movements into my practice can help ease that pain and strengthen the joints. So one last time, all together. Inhale in and exhale out.